Hi, my name's Kate Maupin, and today I'm going to be talking about certain aspects of the Chronicles of Narnia, and more specifically I'm going to be talking about 3 books from the series, and then moving into some of their themes and how they connect to eschatology, but then also how they're applicable to 21st century Christians today. And I'm really thankful that I get to do this project because I got to grow up listening to and reading the Chronicles of Narnia from a really young age, so I got to first experience them from a purely children's literature perspective. And what's really interesting is that as I've gotten older and as I've continued to read these books, I've gotten to see how age and time adds depth to these stories. And I'm truly thankful for how great of a writer Lewis was, because people from all walks of life are able to read these books and are able to get something powerful out of them. And it was a sobering moment for me when I had an emotional breakdown reading a child's book. And it's just, they're that powerful. And they help you understand who Jesus is. At least they helped me understand who Jesus is more. So going into what books we actually read through the semester, which were The Lion and the Witch of the Wardrobe, The Magician's Nephew, and The Last Battle, I'm going to discuss which ones I really enjoyed and why. And the short answer is I loved all of them. And granted, I'm a little biased, but I really did. But I liked all of them for different reasons. So The Lion and the Witch of the Wardrobe is such a great introduction because that was the first Narnia book C.S. Lewis ever wrote. And it's such a great foundation because we get to meet the Pevensies and we get to see and meet Aslan and understand how he connects to Jesus. But then also we get to, Lewis just describes Narnia in such a powerful way that it's just so easy to imagine. And it's such a good, solid base for the rest of the series. And I really enjoy The Magician's Nephew because it's a really good connective piece between all the books. Because the way it was published is it was published right before The Last Battle. So the way Lewis wrote them is that he took care of the very, very beginning of Narnia before he took care of the very, very end. And so I think that's a really good way to just tie up the whole story. And it's really interesting to see how certain characters from The Magician's Nephew are pretty pervasive throughout the entire series. And it's really sweet to see how the professor, who we're first introduced to in The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, how he is one of the main characters in The Magician's Nephew. And so that's how he knew what Narnia even was and could empathize with Lucy, but also we get to see how the White Witch became the White Witch. And it's another one. It's a base of a story, but it's more connective than The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. And The Last Battle could honestly be a video in its own because it's such a wonderful ending. Because there have been many book series that I've read that you stick through it through the very beginning and the middle, but the end is such a letdown that it just ruins the whole thing. And very thankfully, The Last Battle is such a great ending that it just, again, it's something that solidifies just how amazing of a series it really is. And I remember how excited I was when I first started reading it because we actually get to go into Aslan's country at the end, and it wraps up every character so well, and it brings back characters from the past books, and it's just so nice. It's such a good ending book. And I remember being so excited when I first heard Reepicheep's voice on a recording of The Last Battle when he would say further up and further in. And if you don't know who Reepicheep is, he is first introduced in Prince Caspian, and he is an incredibly lovable character and very endearing, and I would highly suggest reading Prince Caspian just to know who Reepicheep is. And I remember first hearing his voice and being so excited because I knew that we were about to get closure and about to see what Narnia led up to and why Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy were sent there in the first place and why they were so important. And just Aslan's victory in general. And also the last battle connects to eschatology really well because it connects to the hopeful side of it. And when discussing eschatology, it can become pretty dark, and there's a lot of questions that are left unanswered. But Lewis covers how hopeful it can be because we get to see that heaven is beyond our comprehension, because we move through Narnia into Aslan's country, and it talks about how the best food in Narnia tastes like plywood and sawdust compared to the fruit in Aslan's country. And it's so interesting to see how that connects to some of Paul's writings, because he talks about how it's like looking through a dark glass, how our life here is essentially blurred. And even though we feel like we have a really, really clear and concise idea of what life is and what it looks like on earth, when really it's going to be incredibly just sharper and clearer when we get to heaven. And it's like a copy of what heaven is, but distorted, and it has pain that comes with it. And I really like how Lewis, to sum up, I really like how Lewis, he captured the hope of eschatology, because it's the end of all times, but we get to be with just Jesus and the presence of God and perfection for all eternity. And I think he captures that really well. And it's really motivating too, to keep pressing on and to keep fighting for the kingdom of God. And it's really, really just, it's hopeful, it's motivating. And like I've already said, and I'm really thankful that he portrayed eschatology in that light. Another thing that I love about Lewis's writings that's really applicable to everyone today is how good he wrote transformation, or how well he wrote transformation, because he starts the very first book with Edmund, who is a very irritating character, and I will not lie, it was a really convicting moment for me when I realized that I had many moments where I was like Edmund, but it was really cool to see him move from a bratty, selfish kid into a wise and just king, because Aslan took the worst parts of him and made him into a man that pushed for his glory and pushed for his good. And I think that's so powerful. And he does this with another character named Eustace, who were first introduced in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, who is like another level of selfish and bratty and so irritating at the very beginning. But then he's transformed through Aslan into a really kind boy. And then at the very end of the whole series, he's a hero. And it's so cool to see how Lewis incorporates transformation into so many characters, and not just those two, but those are the two really big ones that I can think of. And I think Lewis is so great at that is because he understood that transformation, because he was an atheist before he was a Christian, and he actually fought against God and against the reason for God. And it's incredible to see how the grace of God changed what he was and changed the worst parts of him and used him to be logical and analytical for God's glory, and to push people towards him, or to lead people towards him. And I think it's just so powerful because he portrayed transformation so well, because he understood it. And I think that's something that we can all, as 21st century Christians, really relate to, because none of us are perfect. And God is continually changing our hearts and continually transforming us into something more like him. And I think that's so encouraging and just so hopeful. The Chronicles of Narnia they've shaped how I see the gospel, because I was reading them as early as I could read the Bible. And they really help connect the Bible and our own lives And I think that's just a really powerful tool. And they still shape how I see the gospel. And whenever I read my Bible, I can still make connections and still understand how God works through everyday people in multiple different walks of life. And I would highly suggest reading the rest of the series if you haven't. And my personal favorite is The Horse and His Boy, but to each their own. You can read whichever one is your favorite. But it's amazing to see just how powerful they all are together, because even if you read just one book, it's wonderful, but when you read all of them together, it's just it points so straightly towards Jesus, and it's such an encouragement. And I'm so thankful that I got to do this project, and thank you so much for listening.